Jason stood up, the last sip of his coffee lingering on his tongue. The conversation had flowed easily, but now, as the quiet settled back in, he felt the familiar pull of his own routine. He stretched his arms, preparing to leave. He'd come to check on Ben, and he'd done that. It was time to head home. But as he reached for his jacket, Ben's voice stopped him. "Hey, Jason, wait," Ben said, his tone hesitant but earnest. He shifted in his seat, looking a little more unsure than he had before. "I know I probably seem like a mess, but would you mind staying a bit longer? Well, I don't know. It's nice to talk to someone who's not judging me, you know?" Jason paused, looking at Ben. He hadn't expected to stay, but something about the sincerity in Ben's voice made him rethink it. He could tell Ben wasn't asking for much, just some company, someone to talk to. Maybe he needed this more than Jason realized. Jason met Ben's gaze and nodded, slowly sitting back down on the couch. "Sure, I've got a little time. What's on your mind?" Ben let out a breath of relief, the tension in his shoulders easing. He leaned back into the couch, glancing out the window at the overcast sky. "Honestly, I don't even know where to start. I've been stuck in this cycle for a while, just going through the motions. Work, home, repeat. It's like I'm just drifting, not really living, you know?" Jason listened quietly, his large frame relaxed despite the weight of the conversation. He could relate to that feeling of drifting, of being trapped in a routine that never seemed to end. The difference was that Jason had always had a way of breaking free from that feeling. But not everyone did. "I get that," Jason said after a moment, his voice thoughtful. "Sometimes life's just like that. It doesn't give you the space to think about what you want. It's easy to get lost in what you're supposed to do." Ben gave a dry laugh, running a hand through his messy hair. "Yeah, and I'm great at pretending everything's fine, but it's not. I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. Just trying to hold it all together." Jason shifted, leaning forward slightly. "You don't have to have it all together right now, Ben. You're allowed to not know. The important thing is figuring out what's next, even if it's just small steps. You don't have to solve everything at once." Ben met Jason's eyes, and for a moment there was a raw honesty there. "Thanks. I don't really talk about this stuff much, but I feel like I could tell you more. I've been holding it in for so long." Jason nodded, his expression calm. "I'm not going anywhere. Take your time." They sat there in silence for a while, the quiet of the apartment somehow peaceful instead of heavy. Jason's presence was comforting in a way Ben hadn't expected. It wasn't just about the help from last night. It was about the genuine understanding, the way Jason didn't seem to judge or rush him. It felt like someone was finally listening without expectations. Ben finally spoke again, his voice quieter now, but more certain. "I don't know what's going to change, but I think I want to try. I can't keep doing the same thing, expecting it to get better." Jason nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "That's a good first step, Ben. You've already started." Ben smiled back, a flicker of something like hope in his eyes. "I'm glad you stayed. I didn't expect this, but maybe I needed it more than I realized." Jason stood up again, feeling the shift in the atmosphere. The conversation had turned from a simple check-in to something deeper. He could feel that something was different now, not just for Ben, but for him too. "Well," Jason said, stretching his arms again, "I guess I'll get going now. But if you ever need to talk again, or just hang out, don't hesitate to call." Ben looked up at him, his expression sincere. "I will. Thanks, Jason. I mean it." Jason gave him a nod, and with one last glance, he walked to the door. As he stepped out, the air outside felt clearer somehow, less heavy. He had come here to check on Ben, but now he felt like he was leaving with something more than just a good deed. He wasn't sure where this would go, but for the first time in a long time, Jason felt like maybe, just maybe, he'd made a real difference. As he pulled out of the parking lot, he glanced up at the cloudy sky, a sense of quiet contentment settling in. There were people who were lost and drifting, and sometimes all it took was someone to offer them a hand, to sit with them for a while. And that was enough. It was a crisp Saturday afternoon when Jason's phone buzzed. He was in the middle of cleaning his garage, lifting weights and organizing some tools when he saw the message. "Hey Jason, it's Ben. I was wondering if you wanted to hang out this weekend. I'm going out with a couple of friends. Thought you might want to join us." Jason paused, wiping sweat from his forehead. He had only spent a few hours with Ben last week, but it felt like they'd made a real connection. It was a little unexpected. Jason wasn't exactly the type to go out and hang out with a group, but there was something about Ben that made him feel comfortable. He glanced at the message again. "Yeah, sure. Sounds good. What's the plan?" Ben quickly replied, his message coming through with the same enthusiasm he had last time. "We're meeting up at this bar in the city. Some buddies of mine will be there. Just a chill hangout. Maybe grab a drink or two. I think it'll be fun." Jason hesitated for a moment. A group of people, Ben's friends no less, wasn't exactly his usual scene. But then again, it felt like the kind of opportunity to branch out, do something a little different. Besides, Ben had been a good guy, and he'd helped Jason in a way by just being a listener. Maybe it was time to return the favor. "All right, I'm in. See you there." Later that evening, Jason arrived at the bar. It was a typical, low-key spot with dim lighting, a few pool tables in the back, and a wide selection of craft beers. The place wasn't crowded, but it had a laid-back vibe, perfect for a casual hangout. Jason pushed open the door and scanned the room for Ben. It didn't take long before Ben spotted him, waving from a corner booth near the back. There were 3 other men with him, all mid-20s, laughing and talking. Jason made his way over, feeling a bit out of place at first, but Ben's welcoming smile reassured him. "Jason," Ben greeted, standing up and giving him a friendly handshake. "I'm so glad you could make it. This is Mark, Alex, and Ethan." He motioned to each of the guys around the table. Mark was tall, with a shaggy beard and a loud laugh that seemed to take over the room. Alex had a clean-cut appearance, dressed in a button-up shirt, with a quick, sarcastic wit. Ethan was more on the quiet side, but there was a warm energy to him as he gave Jason a nod of acknowledgement. "Hey man, nice to meet you," Ethan said, offering a friendly handshake. "Yeah, we've heard a lot about you from Ben. He's been talking about you all week," Mark chimed in, his grin wide. Jason chuckled, a little taken aback. "I wouldn't be surprised if it's all exaggerated." Ben laughed, shaking his head. "Nah, just that you helped me out when I needed it." "Appreciate it, man." Jason settled into the booth with them, exchanging pleasantries. He noticed how comfortable they all seemed together. Laughter filled the air, and the conversation flowed easily. There were no awkward silences, no uncomfortable stares. For a moment, Jason felt like he was simply part of the group. It was a rare feeling for him, and he didn't take it for granted. The bartender came over to take their drink orders, and Jason, still adjusting to the vibe of the group, decided to keep things simple. "I'll take a whiskey on the rocks," he said. "Atta boy," Mark said with a grin, raising his own glass in approval. "We've got to make sure the new guy has a good time. You're not the type to nurse a beer, huh?" Jason laughed, feeling a little more at ease. "Not really my style. I don't mind a good beer, but I'm more of a whiskey guy." The others nodded in agreement, and the drinks came quickly. They all raised their glasses for a toast. "To new friends," Alex said, his voice light-hearted. "To new experiences," Ethan added with a quiet smile. Jason clinked his glass with the others. Cheers. The night unfolded like a breeze. They played pool, cracked jokes, and swapped stories about their lives. Mark was the most outgoing, telling loud and animated stories from his college days, while Alex enjoyed making quick-witted comments. Ethan, as expected, didn't talk as much, but when he did, his words were thoughtful, and he had a way of making people feel heard. As the night wore on, Jason found himself opening up more than he usually would. The group was easy to talk to, and they didn't pressure him into anything. Ben had clearly chosen his friends well. They weren't the type to make anyone feel like an outsider. At one point, Ben nudged him, leaning in to speak quietly. "Hey man, you doing all right?" Ben asked, his eyes sincere. "I know this is a bit of a new crowd for you, but I'm glad you came out. They're good guys." Jason smiled, appreciating the check-in. "Yeah, I'm good. Honestly, I didn't think I'd fit in, but they're cool." "Yeah, they're all right," Ben said with a grin. "I'm glad you're here." The night continued with more laughter, and as the hours passed, Jason realized he was having a better time than he expected. It wasn't just about being with Ben anymore. It was about being part of something, even if it was just a casual hangout with a group of guys. The feeling of connection, of belonging, was something Jason didn't take lightly. As the evening wound down and they all prepared to leave, Mark slapped Jason on the back. "You're good, man. Next time we'll get you on the pool table." Jason laughed. "I'm not the best, but I'll take you on." Ben grinned at him. "Yeah, we'll see about that." As they left the bar, the cool night air hit their faces, and Ben turned to Jason. "Thanks again for coming out. I think they really liked you." Jason nodded. "Yeah, I think so too. This was fun." The two of them walked out into the night together, and Jason realized that for once, he wasn't thinking about his next move or the next day. He was just in the moment, enjoying the simple pleasure of good company.